Today on the Learn podcast, we're joined with speaker Michael Seery, spreading awareness on male widowhood. Thank you for joining us, Michael.
Thank you, Mercy, for having me on here. It's a really great pleasure to speak to you today.
I'm happy you're joining us. So before we really get into, widowhood, I want you to take us back to before you started your journey into this new chapter of your life. I want you to take us back to when you met your wife.
Wow, that's an interesting story.
Yeah.
I was about 22 years old, and I went to a Rotary youth conference in a small country town in New South Wales. And during the discussion, there was a woman out down the front who tangled with me, let's say, in the discussion. And it was clear that she didn't like me. And about 4 months later, I met her again, and we had conversations. And at the end of the week, because it was also at a Rotary Youth activity, and at the end of the week, we sort of bonded a little bit. And then I went and stayed with her for a couple of weeks while I was learning to be a teacher in a school in her hometown. And one night she invited me out to see her perform in a music hall, which was basically a song and dance sort of routines that they had in those days. And watching her perform on stage and the livelihood of her, I sort of fell in love with her. And I went back to Armidale, which was my hometown at the time, which was about 4.5 hours away. And we started writing to each other. And 12 months later, we were married.
Oh, wow.
So that's the short story.
Yeah.
And just before she died, I asked my wife what she thought of me when she first met me. And her comment was, "I didn't like you much."
Oh.
And I said, "Oh, and what changed your mind?" And her response was, "I got to know you."
Nice.
And I actually recorded that. I videoed the question because I knew what the answer would be.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had chatted about it, but I've actually got it on video, which is probably the only real video I've got of my wife talking to me.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. A bunch of friendships, they tend to start like that. They're like, I didn't really like you at first, but once they get to know each other, they're like, I'm glad you're in my life. I'm glad you're a friend. So I understand what you mean when you say that was her first idea of you. But I mean, you guys eventually did get married, so that's a lovely ending. And now I want us to get to the day when everything changed for you. So what happened that day?
There were probably 3 days, but I'll just talk about the last one.
Yeah.
The first one was when my wife got sick one day and ended up in the ICU. And about almost 3 years later,
Mm-hmm.
I'd been out for the weekend and came home, and my wife had complained earlier in the week that she hadn't felt particularly well. And I said, well, perhaps we should go to the hospital. Oh, no, I don't want to go to the hospital. And I thought, well, I'm not going to force her. And the next morning I got up, and I normally would get up about 5:30 and go to the gym. And before I got up, I thought, right, I'm going to, because I knew she was a bit weak the night before. And I asked her if she needed to go to the toilet, and she said yes. And when I tried to get her out of bed to go to the toilet, she collapsed on the floor. So I ended up calling an ambulance. And that was Tuesday morning. We went to the hospital, and the doctors said that it was sort of a form of sepsis, and they tried some antibiotics and they didn't work. And the following Saturday, the my daughters and I had been spending nights in the room with Neril, and it was my younger daughter's turn this night on the Saturday night, and about 9 o'clock, I said to my older daughter, I think we should, go home and let your mother rest. And as I left, I said to her, it's okay for you to go now. You don't have to hang on. And we left, and about 3 hours later, I was asleep and got a phone call from my daughter, and she said she's gone. Just those 2 words.
I'm sorry. I am so sorry.
So I grabbed my other daughter, and we went to the hospital and spent some time with Neril in the room. The 4 of us, my 2 daughters, my daughter's then partner, who's now my son-in-law, and myself, and we just sat there waiting for the doctor to come to officially pronounce her dead. And it was a funny time because at times it was quiet, at times it was teary, and at times when someone would crack a joke unintentionally, and we'd also laugh and felt a little bit irreverent at times, but it was a nice way to say goodbye.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's hard to lose a loved one. So, again, I'm sorry for your loss. And now I want to ask, because ever since that day, you had to walk a new journey. So, how has your experience of male widowhood been? Because that's not something that's talked about as much compared to female widowhood.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. The day after I went home, I had a couple of hours sleep, and I actually had to go to a sport coaching event where I was helping someone coach new coaches. And I thought, do I cancel that or do I go? And my thought, because I'd told my daughters that they should spend the day, the best part of the day, talking to their own family, letting them know what was happening, what's happened, and let them digest that before we all got together in the afternoon. And I thought, what am I going to do? I can message or ring my brother and sisters. I could ring Neril's brother and sisters. But other than that, I'd just be sitting at home. I might as well keep busy. And I think that helped me get through that first day, just keeping busy doing something that I enjoy and keeping my mind off it. And over the coming days, as we got ready for the funeral, it was right in the middle of COVID, or one of the COVID episodes we had in Australia. And we organised the funeral, and the venue had to be cut in half because of the distance regulations that had been put in place. So a lot of people had to stand outside. That was a bit of a dampener on the funeral itself.
I'm sure.
Service. But it was, my wife didn't want a funeral, and I said to her, you need to give us a funeral. It's not for you, it's for us. You won't be there, other than in a body. And I think the fact that we did have that funeral was something that helped us all to process the death process. And after that, I sort of started eating a lot, drinking a lot, not going to the gym anymore because I couldn't go to the gym anyway. So my weight got on, and I was lonely. My daughter was there, but she was working as worked evening shifts at a hospital, and so I wasn't always at home. And sometimes I thought, is this what life's about now? It's just lonely. And I couldn't talk to anyone because we had restrictions on going out, going shopping. Shopping was about the only thing you could do. Or you could go exercising. So the sporting group that I belonged to, the team, the players would ring me up and say, let's go for a walk. So they'd take me for a walk, and we go for a walk, and we'd walk for an hour and just talk or not talk. And that was something that really helped me. But it wasn't until about 18 months later when a friend of mine asked me to contribute to a chapter to a book that I realised the book was on resilience. And in writing that chapter, I realised that the big difference between my life before Neril died and my life after Neril died is that before I died, I was a husband, I was a caregiver, I was a friend, I had someone to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And the day she died, from then on, I was no longer a husband. I was a widow or a widower. And that's a different role. That's a different identity.
Yeah.
And once I realised that, I started to put in place a plan to actually help widows and widowers at the time actually,
Mm-hmm.
but to create a life of meaning after loss. I just see so many people who get so deep into the grief, the pain of loss, that they don't see that they can enjoy life again, even though their partner's not here anymore. And not only that they can do it whilst honouring their partner.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big change for me.
Yeah. Wow. It's great hearing that you started an initiative to help other people in that situation that you were in. I think that's wonderful. And back to what your wife said about not wanting a funeral, but eventually allowing you guys to hold a funeral. And I think that's so caring because I know that it must have provided you and your family the closure that you needed in order to know that she has passed, for you guys to see that. Because I understand that there's a lot of people who, without that closure, they're unable to move on. They're unable to make that next step because they still think that their spouse, is still there in some way. But I see the importance in you getting her to allow you guys to have that moment where you gather together and respect her and what she did for you guys in your life and how she impacted you. So I think that was a great move on your part. And to hear how it affected you the way it did, where you lost interest in things that you were initially interested in, but getting that recommendation from your friend and how that helped pull you out of the pit that you're in, I think that's so wonderful. So that actually leads into my next question. When you became a widow, did you find that there were proper measures in place for widowed men compared to widowed women?
The brief answer is no.
Yeah.
I didn't find anything. I have a friend who's a psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
and she mostly works with children. And she provided me some advice and some reading material. But other than that, no one suggested to me, go and see a psychiatrist or a psychologist, go and see a grief counsellor, go and join this group or that group. It was sort of, in a way, left to my own devices. And the thing that helped me in that regard is that I had been doing some mindset training, neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, and various similar modalities. And just going along to, and I'd done all the courses, and I'd go back and do the courses again, because just participating in those courses helped me through the process of grieving and getting over the pain. And I like to say that I no longer am in that deep level of pain. However, I have my days. And yesterday was one, Mother's Day. I thought yesterday, well, we're going out to celebrate mothers, and we can celebrate the girls, my daughters, because they're mothers. But I've got no one to physically celebrate with today. To celebrate, I could think about my mother, think about my wife, think about my mother-in-law, all of past. But I don't know, there was a little bit of a hole sitting there throughout the day, which is a bit sad.
Mm-hmm. I understand. I get it. And in days like this, we really have to remember the people who've lost loved ones who can't celebrate with us, who find it hard to get through the day. And I think what would be a great step would be to gather with other people in that same situation and just allow each other a time to grieve, mourn if you still need to, and a time to just be with a community of people who understand your situation. And I think that will be a great initiative. And I mean, since you are more familiar with this, I have to ask you, what ways do you or other people in your position need support that's often overlooked?
I think having the opportunity to talk to others, and this is an initiative I've actually started in the last few months. So I've started this group called Widower Conversations, which meets every Tuesday morning, Sydney time. And it's a half hour to an hour session where widowers get together and talk about a particular topic, which often goes off into a tangent. Sadly, for me anyway, I've only had a couple of people turn up so far. It seems that, and one of the things people tell me about, and I think it's right, is that men don't like talking about their grief as much as women do. From my own perspective, for a long time I didn't talk about it. I bottled it up. But when I started talking about it, I realised that in actual fact I feel better talking about it than what I do not talking about it. So this bit of a conversation is one thing that I do. I think it's good for men to be able to do that. I'd just like to have more people come along and join me to give us a little bit more variety.
I agree with you when you say that men find it hard to talk about their feelings because there is such a stigma around men discussing how they feel and what they're going through emotionally. And I think that's such a detrimental thing for them. And it shouldn't be that way. So I think it's wonderful that you're encouraging them to talk about what they're going through because they're taught to act like they don't have feelings. You guys are taught to bottle up your emotions. And the side effects of that isn't beneficial in any way, even to your health, because not dealing with your emotions and the hard stuff that you've gone through by talking it out with other people, it can take a toll on your mental health. It can take a toll on your physical health. So I think it's a wonderful thing that we're breaking this notion that men shouldn't speak up or speak out about what they're going through because it's only going to help them when they step into this. And now that we're in the topic of ways that we can support you guys who are widowed. I want to ask, what are some healthy ways that you've used to cope with grief and loss?
There's been a few. In the early days, I used to meditate. I still do meditate, and I journal. And I'd write after the meditation. I'd write something, and some of the things that I would write about were that actually I started writing about the early times with my wife. You know, that first meeting, the time when I went to stay at her place, when we decided to get married, and just get, talks about that when I first moved back to Sydney, because just before we got married, I moved back to Sydney, and my wife was living on a coastal town, and so we'd travel. One of us would travel about a 4.5 hour trip on a Friday afternoon to be with the other person nearly every weekend.
Wow.
And spend the weekend together, and then late Sunday night, drive home back to Sydney or back to her town.
You guys were really committed.
Yeah. And we originally planned to get married in September, and I mentioned this at my grandfather's funeral at his wake to my aunts, and my mother said, "I don't know why he's waiting that long," and I didn't realise the reason why she said that, or the motive behind her. And I thought we need that much time to get to do the preparation to get married. So I said to Neril the next time I spoke to her, "What do you think if we got married in the May school holidays, not in the September school holidays? You reckon you could organise that?" And she said, "Yeah, of course I could." So we got married in May, and I thought, I'm not sure if I could have handled another 6 months, another 4 months of driving up to Taree and back again on the one weekend. So it was probably a good idea we did move it forward. And we were married for 44 years, so we had a really good marriage.
Yeah. So we're in the month of May, actually. So did your anniversary already pass, or is it coming up?
It's Thursday of this week.
Oh, I see.
I've had a good time lately because we had Neril's birthday and my birthday a day apart, and that was late April. And then we had Mother's Day at the weekend, and now we've got wedding anniversary this week. It's been a little bit tough this last month, as it is every this time of year.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but I'm thankful that over time you're able to get through this period, and I'm so thankful that you were able to enlighten us on this topic, because it's something that's not talked about openly as much. Actually, speaking with you is probably the first time that I've heard a man talk about his experience losing a wife, because I've always heard the female side. We've read the books, we know what they've gone through. So I really appreciate you coming here and telling us your perspective from the male point of view. And I hope that this drives more conversations around this, and that it encourages any male listener to really open up and to start sharing about what they're going through, so that we can all help them through it. And as we close, I want to ask you, how can listeners reach out to you?
Look, the easiest way would be to go to my website, which is the grandpacoach.com. So the Grandpa Coach is one word, and .com, and there's a contact me page on that, and they can contact me there, or they could follow me on Facebook. My Facebook name is Michael Seery .oz, O-Z, or O-Z, as the Americans say.
Okay.
And, send me a message there. Or say they can message me or email me via the grandpacoach.com website.
Great. Well, all those details will be linked in the description box. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Learn Podcast.